Hi, it's Leo here, and today's topic is going to be about how to find what your style is or figure out what it is, and also how to approach and expand on it. First things first, I'm going to be talking a little bit about my background and how did I become an artist. Ever since I was about 4-5 years old, my dad used to make blueprints of his work. He would draw little pieces like parts because he was a mechanic. And with me being so little, I was just drawn to him doing that. Before I knew it, I would have my own pen and paper set next to me, and I would always draw on paper. And my dad actually, he caught his eye, and then he started passing down to me all his comics. They were mostly Western comics, and those type of comics, if you know how they look like, they're not drawn cartoony, they're more like realistic. So I was already having that little approach of drawing things correctly, like the human anatomy, and that will become my focus later on. But before getting there, the second thing I could say is influences. As I started going to school, about 5-6 years old, I had a classmate that also drew, and he was more of a cartoony type of artist, but he had a good sense of narration to his work. So I also liked the way he did things, and naturally just try to copy. So then I tried to go cartoony. We were influenced mostly by Dragon Ball Z. So any kids in the 90s would tell you that was the biggest thing. Fast forward to middle school, my art teacher at the time was very fond of me, and she recommended that I enter this special art program. It was like a competition, and there was only a certain amount of seats, so only certain amount of students they could take, and she wanted me to compete in there so that if I do make it in, I will get the proper teaching of the fundamentals that will set me in a career path in the arts. So I told my mom about it, and she agreed. So I ended up going into that competition, and a few weeks after drawing whatever they wanted us to do, there was like a still life and a few other things, I got a letter that said I was accepted, and I was ecstatic. So once I got into high school, I would spend the next 4 years in that program, and every year half the class would get cut as you go from freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior. Well, I think we started with 100 people, and then it was about 15 that graduated from that program. So it was pretty cool. But I would tell you that during those 4 years, I learned a lot of things about art, and they really push realism on us. So any little cartoony type of skills I was developing at the time was completely annihilated. Lastly is to draw. You have to make it a habit to yourself to always be drawing. If you're a digital artist, have a digital tablet next to you so you can always squeeze in the drawing in there. If you're old school, or at least you grew up old school like me, always have a notebook. It doesn't have to be a sketchbook. I used to have a blank sheet of paper and my pen, and I would have to draw every day. And it wasn't mostly because I wanted to, it's just that the program requires us to have at least 5 sketches, and that was for 4 years straight. Anyways, fast forward, I finished the program at this point, and it was time for me to go to college, and I had a few art college only lined up for me. And if you go to art school, all you do is art and there's no other subject. But I just couldn't get myself to go to school and just draw and do nothing else. Being an athlete at the time, I didn't want to just go to school and draw. I needed to also, do sports. So I ended up going to a regular college after all, where I could both do art and soccer. It wasn't a loss for me, and the reason why is because by that point I already had 2 art school under my belt, and they were the College of New York and Parsons School of Design. There were summer programs that I did during my sophomore and junior year in high school, and they had given us a blueprint on how to survive and succeed in the art world. The irony actually of this is that once I was in college, for the first 4 years, I wouldn't even do any artwork. I would just focus on the sport. I think I probably drew 3 times in 4 years. Art wasn't done with me, however, because late down my 3rd year reality struck, and I just knew that I needed, to decide what I want to do with my life. It was so bad that I even double majored. That's just how uncertain I was, and good thing I did. For reasons that I cannot mention here right now, because that's another long story. But the good thing, and I can say I'm proud of, is that all I really knew was art, so that's what I ended up doing, and that's what I'm still doing today. Basically, once I had made up my mind, I set up an appointment with one of the guidance counselors in the art department, and on the set day, she was going class by class, showing me what the department had to offer. And as I was picking around, one class in particular caught my eye, and it was a digital and illustration class. So once I looked in, I was like, damn, this is what I want to do, because I'm big into concept art, and I knew that digital art was like a new wave, and I had no experience with it. But in my head I was like, art is art, how hard can this be? Boy, was I wrong. I ended up enrolling into the class. My motivation with art and passion came back. My biggest challenge was just translating my traditional art, the levels that I had, into the digital art, and it took a few months, but once I did, it opened all type of doors for me, books, animation, and it was just beautiful, and I just can't say how much wonderful that decision was for me. And yeah, that does it for the story. I feel like there's a few key points you can pick from this, and I'm gonna be outlining them for you. So first things first, you have to be able to identify what subject matter you want to focus on. That will save you a lot of time, and don't worry, if you're unsure, I'll say you should be covering your bases first anyways. And just to elaborate, by basis I mean what things you should be drawing. Stuff like still life, the human anatomy, portraits, landscape, etc. Obviously that example is mostly for those that want to get into realism. But anyways, that was number one. Number two is that you have to figure out what artists inspire you. You have to go out there and kind of like search. We have internet now, and you could look, flip to art. You never have to go into the old masters, even though they're the best one to learn from. We're in a different generation now, so you could always look at what new artists do, especially since we're in a digital age. So you have to search what artists inspire you, and then you could kind of look at what they do and learn from it, but do not copy them. I repeat, do not copy them. The reasons for that is because when you're copying someone, you are not really learning the fundamentals, and you cannot see behind the mistakes or the step that it took to get there. And B is because you are doing something that's already out there. So instead of copying, you should be trying to translate or interpret whatever you see into your artwork. And the way things will shape up is basically how your style is going to end up to be. Number three is tools. Your medium. Basically what you're going to be specializing in. Some people prefer pencils, pen, acrylic, oil, watercolor, etc. You name it. Your medium of choice should be your favorite way of producing your finest work, and you should be able to do this in a consistent basis. Next thing is to make sure that you know how to draw things correctly, because these things, if you don't correct them early, they become a habit, and then they will bleed into your style and will be very hard to undo. Things such as the human anatomy, how to draw hands, feet, eyes, know your perspective if you're into building, sci-fi. If you know the focal point, how to position things, those little basics are things that you should really practice on or look over, just to make sure that you cover your bases, so that when you move forward into your style, you can exaggerate certain things and still make it work, or you could mess with the proportion, whatever it may be. You could stretch, but at least you know how to look correctly, so that your style doesn't look off. it still looks correct even if it's distorted. After you do all that, you should start realizing that your art has its own niche, and at the same time it looks a certain way to some artists and it looks very different to others, and this will kind of like categorize you into the type of artist that you want to be, and also your future line of work. So obviously if your style, your niche looks more like manga and anime, you're going to start realizing that most job offer that you get or get into will be within that line of work. The biggest and final lesson is A, don't cheat, and B, draw things from life if you get the opportunity. And I cannot stress that enough, because things in life tends to change, and those are things that you cannot pick up from a photograph. And the reasoning behind that is because your eye-to-hand coordination will be greatly tested. At the same time, there's a sense of distance and proportion that you just cannot copy from a photograph. These things in abundance will definitely make you a way better artist, and you will learn way quicker than you will ever do if you're just focusing on photograph. And another little tip is that if you're a digital artist and you rely too much on the undo button, that's another thing, another habit that doesn't really test your line work, because if you're working traditionally, you don't have the luxury to use the undo button, and that's why those traditional artists have very good line work. That'll be all. That's about the gist of things, and you can subscribe if you want more videos like this. I will be dropping another video shortly, depending how well this does, obviously. I'm explaining my paint process, especially with someone with a traditional background like me, and that's drawing digitally now. So you can look forward to that, and that'll be all for now. Later.